Just as the countdown to the CCP's fourth plenum begins, Trump has officially announced the U.S.-China trade war is back on. U.S. Treasury Secretary Bessent and Trade Representative Greer appeared side by side in a rare joint rebuke of Beijing, accusing the CCP of weaponizing rare earths to conduct economic coercion against the world. The United States, together with the EU, Japan, Australia, India, and other partners, 7 countries in all, has launched an anti-rare earths blockade alliance and is rebuilding supply chains. And all of this is happening on the eve of the CCP's fourth plenum. Xi Jinping faces infighting plus external encirclement. Is the anti-Xi camp setting a trap? Beijing's political turmoil may be the prelude to a power stress test. Can you believe it? Just days before the fourth plenum, Xi Jinping personally played a trump card, only for the move to backfire before the card was even laid down. Beijing announced export controls on rare earths, trying to threaten the United States and force Trump to yield. Unexpectedly, Trump hit back directly. The U.S.-China trade war has already begun. Even tougher, Treasury Secretary Bessent and Trade Representative Greer appeared together to publicly blast the CCP for economic coercion against the world, naming and shaming Beijing, not only for strangling rare earths, but for fueling Russia's war machine by buying Russian oil. In their view, Beijing's talk of world peace is a sham. At that point, Beijing utterly lost face. Don't miss the next drop. Subscribe and enable the bell. The CCP's rare earth trump card becomes a self-detonating trap. On October 15th, President Trump bluntly stated that the U.S.-China trade war is back on and that tariffs are a primary key tool for safeguarding U.S. national security. Treasury Secretary Bessent and Trade Representative Greer also slammed the CCP for attempting to use rare earths to coerce the global economy. While the CCP claims its export controls serve world peace, it has long abated Russia's aggression and see it as runs. Aggression and Russia's aggression as aggression. Therefore, the CCP's rare earth curbs are in confrontation with the world. Beijing's newest rare earth controls are lawless to the extreme, demanding that all global goods that contain Chinese-produced rare earths or use Chinese rare earth technology must obtain a CCP export permit. This dragged countries rich in rare earth deposits like Malaysia and Pakistan into the crossfire. Greer produced the consensus reached after 4 rounds of U.S.-China talks in black and white. Both sides agreed that during the tariff ceasefire, the CCP would continue to maintain rare earth supplies. Yet U.S. companies repeatedly complained to the Trump administration that Chinese rare earths and magnets had stopped shipping and that Beijing had imposed ultra-strict export controls, an intentional and open tearing up of the agreement. Greer denounced it. This is not reciprocal retaliation. This is economic coercion against every country. PRC Foreign Ministry spokesman Lin Jian countered that Beijing's move was to maintain world peace and to fulfill non-proliferation and other international obligations, a brazenly shameless lie. The CCP's world peace claim was immediately and mercilessly debunked. Trump strikes. America launches a dual-track counterattack. Bessent said, the CCP claims these controlled export rare earths are used in military materials and they want to maintain world peace. Yet China buys 66% of Russia's energy and 90% of Iran's energy. So who is fueling Russia's war machine? Bessent stated that Washington is considering extending the pause on high tariffs on Chinese goods in exchange for Beijing rolling back rare earth controls. Is it possible to lengthen the tariff truce to delay rare earth controls? Maybe. But this will be negotiated over the coming weeks. That signal, rare earth curbs, is a sign of decoupling. We don't believe Beijing wants to decouple. Again, we don't want to decouple. We should work together to de-risk quickly, diversify supply chains, and reduce dependence on China, Bessent said. Bessent announced that the U.S. is working to revive 5 to 7 strategic industries, including shipbuilding and rare earths. What does that mean? It means the U.S. will proceed on 2 tracks. Tariff ceasefire, trading a temporary tariff pause for China, delaying rare earth restrictions to ease short-term manufacturing and inflation pressures, onshoring supply chains, rapidly closing domestic capacity gaps in areas like commercial and naval shipbuilding, repair, rare earths and magnet chains, critical semiconductor equipment and materials, advanced manufacturing components, and processing of critical minerals, using investment, procurement, and regulatory tools to build local resilience and reduce single-region risk. He noted that in negotiations with China, Washington still holds multiple levers, upstream advantages in semiconductors, aircraft engines, and critical minerals, When confronting a non-market economy, a policy toolkit for industrial competitiveness is required. The subtext: use core supply chain technology and resources as bargaining pivots to secure better agreements. Concrete arrangements: Bessent will meet first with Politburo member and Vice Premier Ha Lifeng before the Trump-Xi summit to pave the way for the leaders' talks. If a framework can be reached on rare earths and tariffs, it could establish an execution mechanism that is monitorable and reversible, reducing secondary shocks to market sentiment from policy flip-flops. A seven-nation alliance takes shape. The world encircles the CCP. Beijing thought rare earths were a trump card to force Trump to yield in trade talks. In reality, the result is the opposite. It pushed the U.S. to treat supply chain independence as a national mission and rallied allies to confront CCP coercion together. While announcing onshoring, Bessent also appealed to allies. This should send a clear signal: we must cooperate, and we will cooperate. We will not allow a group of bureaucrats in Beijing to try to control the world's production chains. The IMF World Bank annual meetings in Washington, D.C. have put Beijing's latest rare earth controls on the main agenda. On October 15th, Bessent said the Trump administration is consulting with U.S. allies, including the EU, Australia, Canada, India, and democratic countries in Asia, to mount a comprehensive response to the CCP. The EU Trade Commissioner publicly accused Beijing of weaponizing control over rare earths and urged the EU and the G7 to act in unison against these restrictions. Japan's Finance Minister Kitsunobu Kato called for the G7 to unite against the CCP. Germany's Finance Minister Christian Lindner, phonetic per text Klinbayer, also said the G7 may take joint measures. Australia's Prime Minister will visit the U.S. next week to seek an agreement on critical minerals supply chains. Countries everywhere are now trying to reduce dependence on Chinese rare earth sources. Greer said the U.S. will next ramp up domestic rare earth production, including government funding for private firms, and repatriate as much magnet production as possible. China controls about 70% of global rare earth mining and 90% of refining capacity. However, analyst Leila Kawaja believes rare earths are Beijing's only real trump card. There's nothing else that can make the U.S. yield. Thus, once governments begin diversifying beyond critical minerals, Beijing's rare earth trump card becomes worthless. Alicia Garcia Herrero, chief Asia-Pacific economist at Natixis, said that if that happens, the CCP will be the biggest loser. The CCP has inflicted pain on the world through its unreasonableness, yet karma has come swiftly. Countries are actively seeking diversified rare earth supplies, leaving Beijing out in the cold. According to Bloomberg, whether this is a CCP miscalculation or opportunism, the emerging endgame signals Beijing's setback on the world stage. Weeks ago, Beijing invited foreign leaders, including India's Prime Minister Modi, to visit, hoping to signal that for nations frictioning with Trump, China could be an alternative partner. But Beijing pushed too hard, nudging those drifting from the U.S. to move closer to Trump again. The trend of decoupling from China will only become more obvious. If Beijing wants to be an unreliable partner to the world, then the world must decouple, Bessent said. The EU Trade Commissioner has already met with the U.S. Commerce Secretary on rare earths. G7 finance ministers also met on October 15th to discuss accelerating diversification of rare earth supply, including more mining refining cooperation. EU officials bluntly stated that Beijing's prior rare earth measures have already forced some EU companies to halt production, causing tangible economic harm. U.S. military power is too strong. Beijing is fearful. The CCP may have played its last card, rare earths, to try to restrain the U.S. militarily, because America's military might, especially its air dominance, is beyond Beijing's reach. Newsweek reported on the 14th that according to the World Directory of Modern Military Aircraft, WDMMA, rankings, the U.S. Air Force remains number one in air combat power, but Asia's air power map is being redrawn. India has surpassed China, long seen as a major air power, ranking 6th globally in air combat capability. Air combat power is decisive in global military strategy. Second is the U.S. Navy, while third is the Russian Air Force, meaning the U.S. Navy's aviation arm outclasses Russia's Air Force. Fourth and fifth place are taken by the U.S. Army and U.S. Marine Corps Aviation, respectively. WDMMA covers 103 countries, tracking over 48,000 military aircraft, and applies a Truval rating (TVR) formula that considers not only overall force size but modernization, logistics, offensive/defensive capacity, local aerospace industry capability, and fleet composition balance, not merely aircraft quantity, but the quality and structure of the force. India's Air Force scores a TVR of 69.4, ranking 6th. Looking at Air Force services alone, it ranks 3rd globally. India fields 1,716 aircraft with a balanced mix, fighters 31.6%, helicopters 29%, trainers 21.8%. In May's Operation Sindoor, India demonstrated combat prowess with precise strikes on Pakistan and Pakistan-controlled Kashmir, reflecting its growing regional air advantage. China's Air Force has a TVR of 63.8, ranking 7th. Despite heavy investment in R&D and modernization, shortcomings in training standards, close air support, and a dedicated bomber force drag down its overall rating. The gap between India and China shows that readiness and strategic employment, not fleet size alone, determine air combat strength. Japan's Air Self-Defense Force, Israel's Air Force, and France's Air and Space Force occupy subsequent positions. Taiwan's Air Force ranks 32nd with a TVR of 33.0. Taiwan Army Aviation ranks 101st with 6.7. Why Beijing tossed out a fury-inducing rare Earth's curve before the 4th Plenum? It's likely not a coincidence. It may reflect intense internal CCP strife. The Commerce Ministry under Xi's control picked the fight. State media coursed approval, hailing it as an ultimate weapon and fatal blow against the U.S., but the move only drove previously distant allies back under Trump's umbrella to jointly build their own rare earth supply chains because rare earths are not truly rare and the refining technologies are long mass and technologies are long mass and fine. This was a classic case of lifting a rock only to smash one's own foot. Moreover, it may well be a political setup by anti-Xi factions, make the world loathe Xi, stick him on the spit, and turn him into a global pariah.